So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this third and last Sky AE intro webinar. My name is Stephanie, and I'm working with the Seed and Knowledge Initiative, Sky, and I will be one of your hosts for the virtual session today. And as usual now, let's begin with a few virtual housekeeping matters for the smoothest running possible of the session. And I'll leave my colleague Nick to share with us this housekeeping matters. So thanks, Nick. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Good morning, everyone, or rather, good afternoon. My name is Nicholas Mulver, and I'm a communications officer in the Sky regional team. I'll be providing technical support for today's webinar, so please feel free to reach out to me in the chat if you have any concerns. Before we start, I want to cover a few important things to note for today. Most participants will by now have had some experience with online meetings and webinars, as well as having heard me give this little speech in previous webinars. I ask you to all please keep your microphone muted and your video off unless explicitly indicated otherwise by the facilitators. The participant video list along the right of your screen can be moved or minimized if it's interfering with your viewing. I encourage you all to engage with the content and each other via the chat and to please remain appropriate and respectful. If you can, please provide your full name and if applicable, your organization as well. All participants should have the ability to rename themselves in the Zoom session. However, if you're having any trouble with renaming yourself, you can just post your details in the chat and one of the Sky team members will change your name for you. As with any webinar, there's always the possibility of technical and connection issues. If such issues do arise, we will ask that you remain patient as we troubleshoot. This webinar will be made available on the Sky YouTube channel, so participants who may be struggling with a poor connection or need to leave unexpectedly can access the recording once it has been uploaded. Thank you, everyone, and back to you, Stephanie.
Thanks very much, Nick. And once again, on behalf of Sky, welcome everyone to this third and last session of our Sky AE intro webinar series. This one is going to focus on social movement, the third leg of agroecology, and I'm sure all of you will discover something a bit new about agriculture today. It's very nice to see quite a few of you already, and also to see names that are becoming familiar after 2 sessions. So it means we are doing quite a good job in raising your interest in AE, or maybe you're already committed to the cause of agroecology. In both cases, it's very pleasant indeed to see all of you today. Just a little bit of background again for especially for the newcomers and also the people who may be joining us or following us on the live stream, the YouTube live stream. So Sky Seed and Knowledge Initiative is a regional partnership of 16 organizations in Southern Africa. And our aim is to promote farmer-led seed systems and agroecology in the region, because we believe this is the only way to restore balance and justice in our food system and also in our relationship with the rest of the planet. And also the only way to achieve sustainable food and nutrition security. So Sky partners are mostly community-based organizations, but also sometimes a bit bigger NGOs. And all these organizations have a long-standing work experience with smallholder farmers in the regions. But we also have advocacy organizations or partners that do advocacy work and research institutions. If you want to know more about Sky, I will invite you to go to our website. You can see at the bottom of the screen, and then you can know more about Sky, but also all the partners across the region. One of our objectives in Sky is to contribute to the the building and the strengthening of an agroecology movement in the region. This implies to reach out to other audiences, but beyond our little club of Sky agroecology practitioners. So first and foremost, to reach out to farmers, because they're really the base of this movement, but also other agricultural practitioners, other sectors, government people, private sector, in the field of agriculture, but also environment, health, social welfare, education. We need all of that in a movement. So this series of webinar is first and foremost to reach out to these new audiences and explain what agroecology is all about, raise interests, and hopefully gain allies for the movement. We will take agroecology back home, maybe in the workplace, and start doing things the agroecology way in those environments. But another objective for the webinars is also to test the interest and meet possibly interested candidates to a deeper, more experiential, longer course that we are scheduling for mid-year next year. And the objective of that longer course is really to train a cohort of new agroecology activists that will be able to join us in leading this agroecology movement in Southern Africa. So later today in the webinar, at the end, we'll go back to this AE course. Elfrida will explain again what we want to do there, and also the next steps, the modalities to enroll in the course. Next, I just want to remind everyone, or also for the new people, who is behind the organization of this series of webinars. It's the AE course team in the Sky Committee of Practice, comprising of Nelson Mudzingwa from Zimsof, John Zira from Ukuvuna, Lawrence Mkalipi from Bauer, South Africa, Vanessa Black from Bauer, South Africa, Shepherd Mudzingwa from Fambizanai Permaculture Center, Chifundo Kokwa from Scope Malawi, Jackie Van Nieker from South Africa, UCT Precious Piri from Regeneration International, and in Sky it's Elfrida, myself, and also with the support of John Wilson. So you see people from all over the region. And for the specific webinar, the team that designed it was Elfrida, Nelson, Shepherd, John, and myself, with the precious support from Ruby on the admin side and Nick for all the communication and technical aspects. So that's the team. The program that we have lined up for you today for this third webinar focusing on social movement is as follows. So first, after this introduction, reminding ourselves of the background and introducing the team, we'll have Shepherd doing a short recap on what we discussed during webinar 2, the previous one. Then we'll have a short session that will discuss what is social movement in general, and basing the discussion from the homework that most of you have submitted. And this will be done in a group session first, and then sharing in plenary the highlights of the discussion that would have happened in the group. And we'll have John also bringing out the main ideas. So that's the second session. Then we'll have a session of presentation about the social movement dimension of agroecology. So this will be done by Nelson through a presentation, and then the moderation of 3 other presentations and the discussion on those. So that will be the main session for today. And finally, at the end of the webinar, I will take some time to reflect as a group with you on this experience of the 3 webinars, and also explain again the way forward towards the course in mid-2021. So that's our program for today. You will have the opportunity to engage with the team in session 2, 3, and 4. So it's quite a participatory session today. And we'll break for 10 minutes between session 2 and session 3. So it should be around 1 o'clock. And we'll try to do better time management this time than the long marathon we went through in webinar 2. So that's the program, and without further ado, I'll just leave the floor to my colleague Shepherd, who is going to take us through webinar 2. Actually, I made a mistake on this program. The recap is on webinar 2, obviously, not webinar 3. Thanks. So over to John Wilson. Thank you.
Okay, so the second seminar was very much looking at, let me show my face, was looking at agroecology as a science and as a practice. So first of all, as a science, let's go to the next slide. So, yeah, we went through the 5 scientific principles of agroecology and their application and discussed them. And I think it's important to recognize that agroecology is very much driven by principles. And this makes it quite different from more conventional agriculture, which tends to be driven by targets and production goals and things like that. And as a result, has a narrow perspective. Whereas if you're driven by principles, you have a broader perspective. They guide you and help you make decisions. So the principles are very critical to agroecology. And they help give one that holistic perspective. So we covered the history of agroecology as a scientific discipline and how it started out in the 1920s, acknowledging different forms of life. And we now use this term. It's interesting, biodiversity is very widely used now, but 30 years ago, it wasn't used much at all. So that's an encouraging sign. So it's approaching it from a systems perspective. And it's all about nurturing biodiversity. So this is just a diagram of the reductionist versus holistic approach. And the holistic approach starts very much from the whole, the ecosystems, and then focuses in on the different parts, if you like, right down to the atom. Whereas reductionism tends to break things into parts and then try to build them together, but it doesn't really work like that. It's very good for analyzing and generating knowledge. Next slide. Tell me if Shepherd comes back. We had presentation on holistic management by Precious Piri, and the big theme there was it's not the cow, it's the how. We always blame the livestock, but it's how they're managed. And she used this quote, ultimately, the only wealth that can sustain any community, economy, or nation is derived from the photosynthetic processes. Green, in other words, green plants growing on regenerating soil. Next slide. So in agroecology, we talk about different forms of knowledge, sources of knowledge. So modern science is one source, but also indigenous knowledge systems, which are very context specific, play a critical role. And we had a presentation from Method Kundidza on that. And he talked about how farmers' use of indigenous knowledge to manage their landscape is based on, if you look at it, it's based on the ecosystem functions and all the connections between everything. So in agroecology, we also recognize farmers as co-researchers, bringing their experience, observation, and information. And this is often passed from generation to generation in those particular contexts. So context is very important. Next slide. Then we had from Juan Fran, who gave an overview of how natural systems function. And at the heart of it is that agriculture is the art of harvesting the sun while returning to the earth what comes from the earth. You can think about that quite a bit. And organic matter is at the heart of it all, because that's what will sustain the microbiology that plays such a critical part in healthy soil. Next slide. Okay, we looked at agroecology as a practice. Next one. So we had some examples of this, and this was on biofertilizer production, on soil health practices, on water harvesting, on organic pest and disease management. So these were just 4 of many different aspects of the practices of agroecological. There are many, many of them, but they're driven by principles all the time. Next slide. So some of the points that came up from the question and answer session is the need for an economic analysis on the application of agroecology, and we need to look at that from what's called a true cost accounting approach, where we look at all aspects of the costs. So often costs are not included in the narrow economic analysis. There was discussion about the application of agroecology in urban and peri-urban areas, such a critical area with much of Africa urbanizing. The role of participation and examples from youth, the role of agroecology obviously is critical in food production, and the important role of policy. If you're going to scale up and scale out agroecology, policy has such a significant part. You can't do it without government. Next slide. Okay, so there was me stepping in to present what Shepherd would have presented much better than me, but I hope you get a taste of it.
Okay, thanks very much, John. And yeah, hopefully Shepherd can connect quickly. Yeah, so we've done the, John presented on the recap. So we've done that, and now we're starting the discussion on the social movement. So we're going to break into groups, and so basically these are the instructions for the group session. I don't know, Shepherd, if you want to go through these instructions, and then Nick and I can form the groups.
Okay, thank you, Steph, and my apologies for the mishap there on the connection. And thank you, the team, for the patience. Basically, what we are looking at in the next session is we are going to be formulated into some groups, and in our groups we just go through a brief introduction of each other and choose a repertoire in the group, within the group. And then in each group that you are going to be in, being led by a SCI facilitator or a resource person, you are going to share and discuss your notion about social movements. What are social movements? What do they mean to you? And probably just share a snapshot of your homework and from webinar 2. And then we'll come back to the main session after 25 minutes. This is done automatically with assistance from Nikki and Stephanie. And the rapporteur who would have chosen from the group will then make a presentation, and we would like to get highlights from the discussions. And these are mainly limited to 3 minutes. We want to be strict on time. I think we can be guided by Nick on breaking away into these groups and facilitate the discussion from the respective groups.
Thank you, Shepard. Let me just give, as requested, a brief breakdown of what to expect. So everyone's going to be assigned to a breakout room. When I do initiate them, you'll be taken out of this main plenary and put into a room for discussion and sharing session around the homework from session 2. Each room will have a lead to guide you. This should go on for about approximately 25 minutes, after which you'll be loaded, automatically pulled out of your breakout room and back into the main plenary to share with the entire group. Just as a little announcement for those who are currently watching the live stream, the stream will be focused on the plenary, where video on the AE for the 21st Century Conference will play along with 2 short videos from BioWatch. So just to reiterate to all attendees, don't be disconcerted when Zoom loads you into your breakout rooms. Stephanie, I just wanted to confirm with you as to who are the team leaders: Shepard, yourself, Elfrida, and John?
And Nelson.
And Nelson, okay. So if you don't mind just giving me a minute or 2 as I assign people to rooms.
Yes, thank you, Nick.
Okay.
Shepard, I think everybody's back.
Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for your time, and I'm sure you had fruitful discussions and contributions from members of the group. Probably we can start from the ones that were in group 1, the chosen rapporteur, to just give us a feedback from the discussion that you had in your group. Over to the group 1 rapporteur.
Shepard, could you name the facilitator? Maybe we didn't notice what groups are we in.
Oh, okay, thank you. That the group 1 was facilitated by Shepard, my group actually.
Yes, that is me, Grant. Can you all hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, go ahead, Grant.
Excellent.
If the speaker can switch the camera on, if possible, that makes the experience nicer.
Okay, can you all see me? Sure. Hi, everybody. My group, we discussed this. It was actually very nice to go through a few of these things. So basically, we discussed the fact that a social group is a group of people fighting for change. That's the essence of all of it. And all of them having a very similar or common goal in that change. So in this, we need to look at things like critical mass of people wanting a change. How we speak to power. This is one of the important things that we looked at, is how we address speaking towards governments, etc. And then part of social movements is people making a noise. So those people that are picketing outside government, etc. And one of the big things that we looked at is how do you grow the movement? Because people tend to sit isolated, wanting change, but nobody else around them understanding the need of that change. And then another one of the important things that came up was seed saving. I hope everybody got that.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Grant, for the feedback from the group.
I just missed the last point, the very last one.
seed saving.
Okay, just
Thanks.
to do, yes, thank you, John, for that one. Thank you for the discussion from the group. I think they came out a number of issues that are key and important from the group. Amongst them, the drive for a social movement, which is the social change, and the ways of how this social change can actually come out, and also looking at the need for bringing up this change and the definition of their social movement, which is quite good also. I think, thank you for that discussion, quite fruitful. Maybe we can get it from Elfrida's group, which is group 2 probably, or let me just put it as Elfrida's group.
Okay. It's Florence is our rapporteur.
Yes,
Okay.
hello everyone.
Can you put your video on, Florence?
No problem. Okay, hi everyone. Greetings from Malawi. Okay, in our group, we discussed like saying the movement, social movement is voluntary, is that type of gathering that have got same mind of people, same purpose, like in a network, whereby they will fight for policy change or social change. Sometimes even the political agendas, they can be there for a country, a community, or in any circumstances, but they'll be there to fight for that change. So to us, it has to be voluntary, everything that as a group agreed. Then we had these examples that we, as members of the grass tool, the movement so far that we have been examples or from the webinar 2 assignment. Phase 3, we looked at the farmers who are experiencing climate change. They can come together and probe more on climate injustices that are happening, and also to allow those policymakers to be able to understand and to take action against all the injustices that are happening, put them into action rather than how the situation is right now. And also to campaign against the use of GMOs, which is like allowing more people or NGOs to come together and as a campaign to make like a social movement so as to share the ideas, the effects or the plans on GMOs, which is affecting like the local methods or the local crops that most of the communities were doing. So we can work together to, as a movement, to do against the GMOs. And also on the liberation of food production, we are looking at how best can we do it. Let's, for example, say like the agroecology movement as an example. We can look at the liberalization of the food production by allowing the farmers, the smallholder farmers, to be free to use the local knowledge, to use the local resources or what the experience they have to produce food for themselves and for the community, but not imposing the companies that will monopolize everything and forcing the communities to do what is not best in their areas. So if this they'll be allowed, then the communities will have a lot of food, surpluses even to sell. That would be the best if a movement is done on the agroecology. We had a lot of examples, but let me stop there, as maybe my friends can add if I've forgotten something, but that's what we discussed. Yeah, thank you.
Shepherd? Is Shepherd with us?
Okay, sorry, my mic was actually mute there. Thank you, Florence, for the feedback, and that was quite good from the discussion of the group. And the key points that came out from your discussion, as I've noted, is to do with the voluntary work, voluntary contribution into the movement by individuals. It's a conviction by an individual to take part in the work of a movement. And you also need to share the same thinking within the movement. And you then fight for the same cause. But the main issue is a social change. We need a change in a particular direction. It can be climate change, it can be GMOs, it can be seeds, like you have indicated. Thank you for bringing that up. Maybe we can go to John's group. Can we have a presentation from the rapporteur from John's group?
This is Lawrence.
Oh, Lawrence, go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Our group came like it's a diverse, organized group of like-minded people fighting or trying to come together for a common goal against injustices. And also it could be not only injustices, it could also be a social change in terms of benefits, like coming together for a certain specific project to change their livelihood. It's also about voicing concerns. Also, they mentioned the example of women marching against Monsanto for GMOs, distribution, and chemical use. It's also, we also talk about the fight for to change something, not just to fight or to come together for only wrongdoings, but also to make their livelihood better. And we also tackled it was a difference between organizations and social movements. We illustrated that organizations can demonstrate certain projects for a specific goal to change or to showcase things that are working and things that are not working. And social movements are a group of people, organizations coming together for a common goal, and that the social movements could be a short-term goal, could also be a long-term activities. It's also a part of networking together as a social movement. And something came out also is that social movement seeks to change specific aspect within a system. Not that everything is wrong, but you are changing what is wrong within a system. We also came out with that together we are not fighting, but changing the mindset of certain individuals or policy makers, because they may not be aware that they are doing wrong things, but changing them, giving them a sort of awareness. And we are not fighting them, but we are trying to alert them for a specific wrongdoings for the benefits of all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence, for such a wonderful presentation from the group. I think it came out strongly from the group, how to differentiate an organization and movements, trying to see which one is which. And I think it was also of very good interest that you came up with a model where an organization can actually be a part of the movement, and that kind of a dynamic. It was quite interesting. And you also brought up a very good point on the diversity of the group members. When you talk about a social movement, it cannot be built maybe by farmers only as a group of people who are farmers. We can also have people with different backgrounds and expertise and to make up the movement, so that thoughts and ideas are actually built from different diverse backgrounds. And it is also coming out strongly that the main agenda is for a social change, of which the change that is portrayed in the group is mainly starting from a mindset shift, a change in the mindset, making policy analysts and makers see things from a different angle. I think that's quite great. We can also have another presentation from that was Nelson's group.
Yeah, Rekai is going to lead.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Rekai, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Nelson. Thanks, Shepard. So I'll just touch on what we discussed in our group, answering the question.
Could you switch on your camera?
Oh, sure. I'm not sure how to. Is it on?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, we can see you. Thank you, Rekai.
Oh, okay, great. So we touched on a number of points. I think first we talked about the characteristics of social movements and identifying them as participatory, as action-oriented, and as rooted in the most pressing issues of our time. And when we were talking about action-oriented movements, an example came up about the Plant a Million Trees movement, where participants were seeking alternatives to use of charcoal, but also looking at ways to plant fruit trees in places where they would grow very easily. And so in that way, the social movement is driven by a goal of delivering social change in a particular community. We then went on also to discuss how social movements can change themselves. How can they evolve? How can the movement grow? And this discussion came out of an observation that social movements can sometimes be characterized as radical, and that sometimes the actions taken are radical and done so to push a specific agenda. But the discussion was saying that, okay, well, there's an opportunity potentially to learn from the role of influencers and social media influencers and how they build mass followings on social media. And here we were trying to explore how might social movements, particularly around food and agroecology, benefit from generating mass followings through maybe less radical means, or things which are characterized as less radical, like what social media influencers do. And of course, I think a point that's been brought up by all other groups is that social movements are made up of individuals. And we saw that as an important dimension, and that this would influence the dynamics of the movement, and that these individuals will have a shared and imagined identity together as they pursue the goal of the movement. And an important facilitator of reaching that goal is aggressive and deliberate policy and legal support to deliver the desired social change which the social movement envisions. So that's the summary from our group discussion.
Okay, thank you so much, Rekai, for wrapping it up from the group. I think it's also telling well with the discussions that have been going on in other groups, and it's quite good that you also brought up a concept of different ways of approaching the change that we want, looking at how we can influence different people, the strategies and mechanisms of influencing those different people, and also trying to strike a balance between radical, those ways that are seen as radical, and those that are not radical in people's views. And it's also very good you brought up a concept of, or an idea of, the policy and legal framework support. How can these be there to support the change that we want. It's quite good, and thank you for bringing that one up. We can have the presentation from Stephanie's group.
Hi, this is Heather Palmer from African Vision Malawi. I'm actually based in the UK at the moment. We came up with similar, obviously similar ideas, but from what we said social movement was a group of people who were passionate about change, particularly about ethical and equality change. So some examples were current social movements such as Black Lives Matter, women's equality, animal rights, disability rights, and then we discussed about large social movements such as the climate agreement in Paris in 2015 and Extinction Rebellion, which goes all around the world, where you've got a lot of people trying to make policy changes, etc. And then we discussed about the different actions that people were using, such as protesting, advocacy, signing petitions, and then we sort of went down. So you've got your individual, maybe social movement in your own country. As an example, the land occupation in Zimbabwe. So sometimes there's different social movements depending on the country that you're in. And then we discussed about what, if you went down from that, what is our part within the social movement? So it's not just ticking a box or signing a petition, it's actually about walking the talk and practicing what you preach and spreading that word. So it's not just about other organizations doing it and you're nodding your head saying, yes, that's great. It's actually showing that we can make a difference. And then how do you spread that message throughout your own organization, your own community, and particularly with the youth to make that ethical change. I think that was most of the things we discussed. Maybe Stephanie can come in if there's something I've forgotten.
Okay, thank you, Ida. I think the presentation was good and touching on the main highlights that came out from your discussion. And it's also very good that you brought up a very key and crucial component of a movement, which is around walking the talk. It's not about just signing a petition and you are done, but without following up that with particular actions. That's also very key that you brought up that one. And you also painted a picture of the scale of movements that can be done. It can start from an individual and grow up to communities and even grow up to nations and even grow into a worldwide movement. You gave quite good examples of those particular movements. But the most important thing is we are trying to make a difference. That's what you brought up and that was quite good. And you also brought up different strategies of getting the way to make a difference, which you said you can come up with protesting, we can come up with advocacy and different strategies that can be employed. That was quite good. And thank you. Maybe we can have John to assist us with a wrap up of the presentation on what is a social movement, just trying to touch up on everything that has been discussed maybe within this presentation. Over to you, John.
Yeah, no, well, I think it's all been said. It was an excellent discussion and some really good points there. Out of that, I came up with this short little statement that a social movement is an organized group for the short or longer term, where like-minded and passionate people come together to struggle for change in a variety of ways. So that was my sort of summary based on what I heard, trying to bring, I mean, the struggle is trying to bring in that walking the talk. It's not just, as the last group said. So I think an interesting addendum was the how do we grow the movement? So I thought there was some interesting points coming up there, and I think that's a key question to carry forward, because I think that is often the struggle with movements is how to grow the movement. What's the best way to grow the movement? And certainly within the agroecology movement, it's a big question now, because it's the potential is huge, but it needs that movement. So let me leave it there. Otherwise, I'll just start repeating what others have said.
Okay. Thank you so much, John, for such a good wrap up and coming up with our own term of a social movement within this group discussion. That was quite good. I think we can actually coin that one into a definition of a social movement that came out from this particular presentation. Thank you for that one, John. Maybe over to Steph for coordination further going forward, to hand over to Nelson.
Thanks, Shepard. I think we have come to the time for our break. So we'll break for about 10 minutes. And then, so it's 15 past the hour. So we'll meet again at 25 past. And Nelson will take us through the social movement dimension of agroecology. So enjoy your break, and we'll see you again at 25 past. Thank you.